If you're listening, chances are you've probably meditated before. I mean, it's so incredibly easy these days to access guided meditations through the apps on our phone, and YouTube has tons of guided meditations. You may have done daily or weekly meditation in school, though when I was in school, I don't recall it actually being referred to as meditation. I think they called it something else so we wouldn't groan and roll our eyes. Maybe your workplace does a short daily group meditation. Maybe you've taken up meditation in order to manage stress. It's such a widely accessible subject. So why did I choose to talk about it? Hey, I'm April, and we are on a witchful journey. Before we get into the lengthy topic of meditation, I should note that I'm not a doctor. I don't have a PhD in anything. None of this should be used as a replacement for anything your doctor has diagnosed or prescribed. Consider it supplemental. I also want to take a second to say thank you. Since the last episode, I've gotten some amazing feedback from a few listeners, and I'm excited to say that I've noticed a handful of 5-star ratings on one particular podcast streaming platform. Still a little bit shocked, but incredibly grateful for those of you who have tuned in at this point. So as usual, let's kick off by hearing from the tarot deck. Today's card is the Hanged Man, pulled from the 88 Gemstones tarot deck. The name sounds bad, but looking at the card, the man is hanging upside down from the branch of a living tree by 1 foot. The other foot is free and tucked behind him in a way that forms a triangle with the same leg. His hands are tucked behind his back, forming triangles with his arms. The interesting part of the image is that his face is calm. He isn't panicking. The card represents waiting in suspension, having faith and letting go of things you can't control. It suggests that you may feel as if you're in a situation that won't end well. This isn't a time to force something in a direction we want to go in. It may be that the timing isn't right, or that something needs to be learned first. It may simply be that we need to have patience. That's something that isn't exercised as much as it should be, patience. We always expect a thing to happen immediately because we will it to, or because we feel we've worked hard for this thing that helps us get something faster, so we want it now. We're an instant gratification culture. This card suggests that having and exercising patience, as well as letting go of control and having faith that things will work out, or even letting go of things that don't serve you anymore, will be beneficial in the long run. Which is actually perfect for today's topic, because having patience is a small but important part of meditation. Meditation isn't something that can be mastered immediately. It requires time. Time that I know many of us feel like we don't have on a daily basis. So why should we do it? Why should we take that time out of our day? What could we possibly get out of it? Generally speaking, the goal of meditation is to calm the mind, which then increases our ability to maintain focus and become more productive. It also creates a ripple effect on other aspects of our lives. When we're able to calm our minds, we're able to reduce stress levels, which evens out our nervous system. Our minds and bodies become more relaxed, and we're able to sleep better. Our blood pressure gets to a healthier level, and stress-induced hair loss becomes less likely. Meditation can strengthen our immune system because we're getting better sleep and are experiencing less stress. Calming the mind allows us to become more aware of pain, both physical and emotional, and allows us the ability to address those pains with more clarity. Addressing emotional pains improves our emotional health by fostering a more positive and balanced mindset, helping with PTSD and mental health. When we address emotional pains, we're not only ultimately improving our understanding of ourselves, we're improving how we communicate. When we do that, we improve our relationships with others. Meditation also reduces brain chatter. Brain chatter are those little thoughts that pop up and often have a tendency to just keep running along until you bring your attention back to them and redirect or quiet them. It's tied to not being able to focus on tasks, not being able to fall asleep, depression, and anxiety. Reducing brain chatter can help us build mental resilience, because a lot of the time, the brain chatter can be negative thoughts or can lead to a person thinking there's something wrong with them because they have trouble focusing. When we practice meditation, it can ultimately help us get better at coping with challenges that come up in our lives. Not just because we're better able to quiet those running thoughts, but also because we've begun to take time to understand ourselves, understand others better. Regular meditation can even change our brain structure by creating more and stronger neural connections. Let me say that again. You can rewire your brain through meditation. Thousands of studies in the neuroscientific community show that with 8 weeks of regular meditation, the brain has begun to rewire and strengthen itself. A study from 2012 at UCLA School of Medicine found that the corpus callosum, or the grand central station of the brain, was stronger, thicker, and more well-connected in practitioners of regular meditation. So how does that benefit us in the real world? Well, they saw an increase in mental clarity, creativity, ambidexterity, vision, musical abilities, memory, mental health, intuition, coordination, focus, happiness, success, and a better balance of the use of both hemispheres of the brain. Things like depression, anxiety, loneliness, and dyslexia decreased. For a time, meditation was, and might still be in some circles, considered New Age. Or it was considered a practice that should just be left to the monks, since a lot of people picture Buddhism when there's mention of meditation. So which is it? What if I told you it's neither? It's a common misconception that meditation is primarily an Eastern practice. The word meditation comes from the Latin word meditatum, which means to ponder. It's a bit of an umbrella term that covers everything from mindfulness and contemplation to communion, trances, and even chanting practices. And really, there is no wrong way to meditate. It all just depends on which form of the practice you're aiming for. The practice of meditation is ancient. So ancient that there are archaeological findings that suggest that hunter-gatherers practiced an early form of it. And it probably started with fire gazing. Meditation may even be as old as humanity itself. We're talking about maybe 100,000 years. It's hard to nail down an exact origin in place and time because for many thousands of years, the practice would have been passed down orally until humans began to keep physical records of things that were considered important. The earliest written records date back to the ancient Vedic practices, the Hindu Vedas in India, around 1500 BCE. You see, the cave yogis and Vedic sages of India had a practice that they had been passing down via oral tradition for centuries until 1500 BCE, when the Vedas were written down in text. Prior to that, sometime between 5000 BCE and 3500 BCE, they recorded it differently, with ancient wall art depicting humans seated in a meditative posture. The ancient sages and yogis of India were considered by the Greek philosophers to have the highest virtues. Because of this, philosophers like Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, and Epicurus began to practice navel-gazing meditation to aid them in their philosophical contemplations. All over the world, each culture through the ages has practiced some form of meditation. The ancient Egyptians, some 5,000 years ago, painted hieroglyphics on the walls of tombs that depicted a seated person with their hands on their knees, suggesting they practiced a form of meditation, which makes total sense because they were very spiritual people. And we'll dig deeper into ancient Egypt another time because there's just so much info that I want to share on that, but it's not totally meditation related. And this is an episode where I could easily go on so many tangents, and I really should stay on topic. Otherwise, we'll be here in this one episode until the end of time. So, the Torah mentions a type of Jewish meditation practice that likely began around 1000 BCE in Palestine. Their meditations were mostly based on the deep contemplations of the names of God, their philosophical principles, symbols, prayers, and the Tree of Life. These meditations are meant to bring spiritual liberation and allow the practitioner to attain the Holy Spirit and reach the spiritual realm. China and Buddhist India have recorded forms of meditation from around 600 BCE and 400 BCE. You see, in the 6th century BCE, Siddhartha Gautama left his place as an Indian prince and went searching for enlightenment. He learned first from the ancient yogis of India and still felt that he hadn't quite reached the level of enlightenment that he was looking for. So he decided to branch off and created his own methodology. Eventually, he became Buddha after finding enlightenment. And then he spent decades teaching his methods to others. This eventually led, several centuries later, to the Buddhist styles that we know today. Those being Vipassana, Samatha, loving-kindness, and walking meditation. In the same century as Buddha, we also begin to see Jainism in India, Taoism in China, and Confucianism in China. Each of those religions has a different approach to meditation. We'll talk about all of that in a minute. Sometime between the 3rd and 6th centuries, the Desert Fathers and Mothers in Egypt was established, and they incorporated forms of meditation into their Christian practices. This could be where the Jesus Prayer originated, which is basically a chanting form of meditation. And the chant goes, "Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me," and is repeated rhythmically, mantra style, however many times the practitioner feels is necessary. A side note on that, I found something that says that the words "a sinner" were added to the end of the chant phrase sometime between the 10th and 14th centuries in Greece, making the full phrase, "Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner." In the 5th century, the Eastern Orthodox Church adopted the Jesus Prayer and eventually included the art of inner stillness, known as hesychasm. Apologies if I mispronounced that. Meditation began to flourish at this point. The ancient Celtic Druids, which is a pagan tradition that began as far back as 25,000 years ago, practiced inner journey meditations, which included shamanic methods, and focused awareness of body and/or breath. Their practices weren't so much for transcending the body, but for honoring the physical realm, nature, and the sense of connectedness to all forms of life. Their meditation practices entered written history in about 200 BCE, but had largely been removed by the 2nd century, with Druidic practices being almost non-existent by the 7th century. We'll revisit the Druids in another episode, I promise. Meditation was further developed in the 14th and 18th centuries by the Roman Catholic Church, with the Catholic Rosary. The Rosary isn't just a beaded chain with a cross on it. There's a form of meditation that accompanies that beaded chain, which consists of the repetition of prayers and contemplation on the life of Jesus, which are referred to as the 15 mysteries of the Rosary. Each individual mystery is connected to an event in Jesus' life and has a meditation that accompanies it. In the 18th century, several of the Eastern philosophical texts began being translated into European languages. By the 19th century, there was increasing interest in Asian spiritual traditions by scholars and missionaries from the West because of these translations. And the U.S. transcendentalists like Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson admired and were probably inspired by Eastern philosophy and spirituality. By this point, both Eastern and Western Christianity used meditation as a method of cleaning and opening up the mind, first with the Jesus Prayer, followed by the Noetic Prayer, finally the Prayer of the Heart. By the early 20th century, that interest in revival exploded with the introduction of meditation to the United States. This included physical meditations like yoga. 1936 marks the beginning of recorded scientific studies on meditation. The first EEG was done on a practitioner in 1955, and in the 1960s, a yogi named Swami Rama demonstrated to scientists that he could voluntarily control his heartbeat, his blood pressure, and body temperature, as well as produce specific brainwaves on demand, and remain fully conscious of his environment while his brain was in deep sleep. all because of meditation. In 1977, we saw the first collection of scientific studies on meditation. And then in 1979, Dr. John Kabat-Zinn founded the Center for Mindfulness at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. His work there in mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, was instrumental in bringing public attention to the benefits of meditation. So now that we've trekked through history, and I hope you're still with me at this point, how can we get the most out of our meditation experiences? I guess it depends on if you've ever meditated before. And it depends on what styles or methods work for you. If you're just starting out, I would begin practicing either by using guided meditations, which are excellent for beginners because they're widely accessible, generally non-religious, and are common for counseling, therapy, and group support. So there's tons of them. Or you can start by just getting comfortable in a place where you won't be disturbed for a little bit. Setting a time limit for 2 to 5 minutes, closing your eyes, and just follow your breath as you breathe in, and follow it again as you breathe out. Practice gently bringing your attention back to your breath when you notice that your attention or your mind has wandered. There isn't any need to call yourself out for wandering. Just notice it, and gently bring it back to the breath. When the 2 to 5 minutes is up, gently bring your attention back to your body and your surroundings, and open your eyes. It's a lot harder than it sounds at first, so don't be easily discouraged. The goal in the beginning is just to train your brain, to stimulate that neuroplasticity, so that instead of going into autopilot, you start to take back that executive control. That's a lot of what the mindfulness technique is about, getting yourself away from autopilot so that you can rewire your brain and be able to focus on the moment. If you only have 5 minutes a day to do this, that's fine. They say that ideal meditation time is anywhere from 5 to 12 minutes a day. And the reason I suggest some mindfulness meditation is because you're practicing cultivating awareness in the present moment, anchoring your attention to what's happening in the moment with your breath. And you're also practicing just noticing that your attention wandered, and just letting that go, and to focus it again on your breath. Doing that without feeling the need to mentally call yourself out for it is a big deal, because it does happen. And when you're just starting out, it happens a lot. Just practice letting thoughts go when they come up, but not necessarily attempting to stop them. And this doesn't mean that if you have an itch on your nose, you can't scratch it. Absolutely scratch it, because otherwise, your focus will be on trying to ignore that itch. You don't have to keep your eyes closed, and there's no specific way that you have to sit or breathe. Like I said earlier, there's no wrong way to meditate. You can meditate solo or in a group. You can either have silence or music, whatever works best for you. And don't be surprised if emotions come up while you're meditating. It's okay if they do. And it's also okay if nothing comes up. One thing I definitely suggest is using reminders. Visual reminders to meditate are a great way to make sure you work meditation into your routine. It can be sticky note reminders, a cushion on the floor, or if you prefer stickers, you can use a physical calendar and put a sticker up on the days that you meditate. If you're using sticky notes or a cushion, something that generally stays in one place the whole time, then it may be a good idea to change up that reminder once a week or so. Change the color, change the phrasing, or the placement. The goal there is to create new patterns so you don't accidentally go into autopilot. We're working on building better neural connections here. And when you feel ready to branch out into other forms of meditation, you can try meditating while lying down instead of sitting. You can try moving the focal point from the breath to something else. One form of meditation with a focal point is contemplation, where you focus on a question or a topic. Another focal point meditation is visual-based, where you focus on an object in the room or focus on a mental image of your choosing. You can try some body-centered meditations, which are noticing and focusing on any and all physical sensations in the body. Things like how sitting in the chair or on the floor feels. Sensations that your feet are picking up. Are they cold? Are they itchy? Does your stomach feel hungry? Is your mouth dry? Is the arthritis in your hands bothering you today? Things like that. You could even be systematic about it, doing what's called a body scan, starting at the top of your head and moving from one section of your body to another until you get to the tips of your toes, bringing attention to any sensations that come up during your scan. This form of meditation is a great way for us to become aware of physical aches and pains, areas that feel uncomfortable, how our posture is, and if we should work on it, and even things like hunger, thirst, exhaustion, and strain, which a lot of us tend to ignore during daily life because we're just too busy rushing around. Another form of meditation that you can try is similar to doing a body scan. It's called progressive muscle relaxation. This is one that you might be familiar with if you attended school in a community that was pretty health-centered. In this meditation, you should at least be seated, but I prefer to be lying down. You'll understand why in a second. Beginning at the top of the head, you'll want to tense and relax the muscles in each section as you go. So the face, then the neck, then the chest, then each individual arm, and just keep going until you get all the way down to your toes. Relax the muscles completely if you can. It has been noted that this type of meditation may help with chronic pain. You could also try emotion-based meditations, where you focus on one specific emotion, how it relates to you in the moment, and what kind of effect it has on you. If you want to work on self-love, then a loving-kindness meditation would be a great branch to move to. In a loving-kindness meditation, you focus on silently extending compassion to yourself and those close to you, and then the world. And you can replay memories of kindness in your mind, or silently repeat affirmation-like phrases, and visualize being surrounded by a warm, loving light. Mantra meditations can be really useful. I believe it has something to do with the rhythmic vocalization, though it doesn't always have to be out loud. One very well-known mantra meditation is the Om, but it can be whatever phrase or sound that you'd like it to be. Transcendental meditation is a spiritual form of meditation that includes a mantra. You're generally seated, breathing slowly, and focusing on trying to rise or transcend above your current state of being while focusing on a mantra. If you feel the need to be moving, you can try walking meditation. It's not just going for a walk, though. The goal is to walk at a natural pace, but for your focus to be on the lift and fall of the foot, noticing which muscles are being used to make walking possible, and the way that your weight shifts as you're moving along. I know for me, gardening can be a form of meditation, because if I'm focused on how the soil feels in my hands, how the plants are growing, and what it takes for them to grow, and the harvest that I'll be able to get from it, I definitely feel a lot better by the time I'm done. Let's circle back to the Eastern practices I touched on really quick earlier to see how they use their meditations. In the Buddhist meditation practice called Vipassana, the focus is on awareness of what is happening exactly as it happens. This is different from mindfulness because it's not just being in the present moment, but also putting aside interpretations, preconceptions, perspectives, and reactions, and being aware of what is, exactly as it is. The goal is to achieve liberation by breaking down the barriers that prevent us from experiencing things exactly as they are. It's said that achieving this generally happens gradually, over many years. In Jainism, the practice involves mantra repetition, gazing, breath awareness, visualization, and self-inquiry through contemplation. The goals are self-purification, self-discipline, and nonviolence. In Taoism, there is the emphasis on union with Tao, which is nature and the cosmic life force. Meditation practices involve the generation, transformation, and circulation of inner energy. This is one type of practice that I use in my craft. Some styles focus on improving health and gaining longevity. One form of meditation is the emptiness meditation, which is where you sit quietly and allow all mental images, thoughts, and feelings to dissipate. If any come up, you let them fall away again without following them. The goal of this meditation is to collect and replenish vital energy forces and spirit. It's probably my most practiced meditation. Another form they practice is visualization, which is comparing different aspects of the cosmos in relation to the self and body. They also do a breathing meditation in which you quietly observe the breath until it is, and I quote, extremely soft. I'm not exactly sure what that means, so I could be wrong on this, but to me, extremely soft sounds like it's meant to mean something like barely perceptible, like really shallow breathing, or longer time in between breaths, if that makes sense. Inner vision is another form of Taoist meditation. This is one where you're visualizing inside one's body and mind, which is meant to mean visualizing all the organs, the deities within the body and mind, vital force movements, and thought processes. The goal is to acquaint yourself with the wisdom of nature in your own body. This meditation requires a teacher or a very good book on the subject in order to successfully practice. One form that I find really interesting is called internal alchemy. It's about self-transformation utilizing visualization, breathing techniques, movement, and concentration. It's a very complex practice as it's the most advanced form of meditation practice in Taoism. Most of the Taoist meditations are done with eyes half closed and fixed on the tip of the nose. Confucianism focuses on morality and community life. Over time, quiet sitting meditation, or Jingso, hopefully I pronounced that right, has been added to this practice in order to also focus on self-contemplation and self-improvement. Fun side note. What's really cool is that Tai Chi is both an ancient Chinese martial art and a form of moving meditation. I love Tai Chi. Japanese Zen Buddhism practices aim for perfection of personhood. This utilizes sitting meditation called Zazen, where the practitioner attempts to embody non-discriminatory wisdom. Another way to say that is probably embodying wisdom that lacks all bias. This is unique compared to other Buddhist traditions. Remember how I said every culture throughout the world has some form of meditation? Well, here's two more that I want to share with you. The first is Sufism, otherwise known as the mystics of Islam. This practice began about 1400 years ago. The core goal is to connect with Allah and allow the ego to die. The different forms of meditation include whirling, walking, breath, mantra, gazing, bond of love, and heartbeat meditations. These all assist practitioners to maintain a constant remembrance of Allah and to awaken love within the heart. The last one that I want to share with you is on the other side of the ocean, in North America. Long before European boots touched the dirt in North America early in the 17th century, Native Americans were practicing forms of meditation. I'm sure each tribe had and continues to have slightly different practices, but overall, their meditation practices are rooted in the connection to the land and the cosmos and community. They're embedded in rituals, ceremonies, and daily activities. Many tribes use sacred plants during meditation. Plants like tobacco, sage, sweetgrass, and peyote. Many of the meditation practices involve spending time in nature, connecting with it, as nature is the healer, teacher, and guide. The goal is to enhance spiritual awareness and have a close connection to the Great Spirit, which is the universal life force in all things. Music and dance are forms of meditation, along with drumming, singing, and, of course, chanting. These forms help connect to the spirit world and enter meditative states. Dream work, which is something that I want to talk more in depth about in another episode, is another form of reflective meditation. Interpreting, journaling, and seeking guidance from dreams is used to connect to the inner self and the spiritual realm. Vision quests are one example of a well-known rite of passage that involves meditation. Participants prepare for their vision quest through prayer, meditation, and purification rituals. Once preparations are done, they go on the quest itself, which usually involves going into solitude and either foraging for food and drink during this time or fasting and engaging in prayer and meditation, which, depending on the tribe's techniques, may or may not be augmented. The goal is to come away from the quest with a stronger connection to the inner self and wisdom from the spirit realm. Sweat lodge ceremonies are another example of a well-known tradition that involves meditation. These ceremonies take place in a dome-shaped structure where water is poured over heated stones to create steam. Combined with prayers and song, one can meditate. The intention is to cleanse the body and mind, promote healing, and facilitate spiritual growth. You've probably already put the puzzle pieces together at this point, but I want to talk about how we can use meditation practices in the craft, as in witchcraft. I don't typically do full-on rituals involving casting a circle and such. Most of my rituals and practices are shorter and less complicated than that. I'm not saying don't bother. I'm just saying that it's not something I generally do. But even without long, complicated rituals, I still incorporate meditation into my practice. Before a spell, I'll meditate on how I'll need to go about the spell, the things I'll need, getting into the right mind space, and the intention behind it. Meditation is great for grounding and calling on the energy within you and around you, and connecting with the elements you're using in order to cast successfully. It doesn't always have to be quiet meditation either. Personally, I do a lot of singing, chanting, dancing, and drumming in order to call on the energy needed. Before using your divination tools, it's helpful to meditate with them. Doing this helps to access and heighten your intuition so you can interpret the messages that come through. It's also a good way to get to know your tools and feel their energy. Anytime you're attempting to connect and communicate with the spirit realm or the universe, source, spirit, gods, goddesses, whatever you want to call any of that, that's generally through meditation. Dream work, as I mentioned when talking about the Native American practices, is super helpful in practicing your craft. I've been digging deep into that for over a year at this point, and it deserves its own episode. Like I mentioned at the beginning, we can use meditation to quiet the mental chatter so that we're able to tune into our intuition. It's amazing what we can pick up when we do this. Trance states and higher awareness, as I mentioned earlier, are another way to use them in our practice. Astral projection is another one where meditation beforehand is really helpful. Shadow work, when doing contemplation meditation or reflective meditation in terms of shadow work, you'll be able to uncover so many layers, even ones that you didn't know were there. And trust me, shadow work deserves its own episode, so we'll dig deep into that too. And last, unlocking or unblocking inner magical energies can be achieved through meditation. Personally, I use meditation in a large portion of my life. It's the foundation of the majority of my practice, as I imagine that it probably is for many that practice the craft. I also use it for mundane purposes as well, because stress is real and has the potential to cause a lot of damage. So just do it. To improve your magical practices, your spiritual practices, and just your life in general. Thanks so much for tuning in and hanging out with me today. Next time, we'll be talking about another story that I have for you. One that you probably know a little bit about already. The Blair Witch. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss out on future episodes, hit those like and follow buttons. It's super helpful in letting me know what topics you guys find interesting. For now, you can find me on Facebook, Witchful Journey Podcast, on Instagram at @_witchful_. _journey. For those of you that need a reminder, the underscores are the spaces with the little lines at the bottom. And on BlueSky at awitchfuljourney.bsky.social. I enjoy hearing from listeners, so if you pop in on my socials, say hi. You can also email me at awitchfuljourney@gmail.com. I'm April, and we are on a witchful journey. Enlightenment. I feel like I'm saying that weird. Enlightenment. Okay, we're done being weird.